Well, it's happened again. I don't really know how, but we got our hands. Oh, this is heavier than I thought it would be. This is the Turtle Beach VelocityOne race wheel and pedal system. This wheel is one of the more curious releases in the sim racing space over the past couple of years, with Turtle Beach being a headphone company, right? Well, they actually are already in the simulator business a little bit with their flight simulator products. And Turtle Beach were nice enough to send me a wheel of my own to review. No affiliate code for this one, no sponsorship, but I did receive the wheel from them for free, so take that into account when you're trying to figure out my biases to and against the wheel. And I'll also put this disclaimer in every one of my gear review videos. I am not a hardcore sim racing gear reviewer. I am a sim racer, I enjoy racing, I think I'm pretty good at it. But what I like to do is think about how these products are for the common average sim racer. If you want a more hardcore stance on the reviews and the more nitty gritty of what these wheels and other products can do, I suggest going to a place like Boosted Media. But now that that's out of the way, I raced a full week with this Turtle Beach VelocityOne racing wheel in different types of racing to see how it compared to all the other wheels I've driven, and you're probably spoiled from the title. I think that this wheel is overhated, but even with that, I am still a bit confused about who to recommend the wheel to. So before we jump into a race and talk about the driving experience of the wheel, let's talk about the price and what you get for it. The price of the bundle is $650, which on first glance seems very expensive when you compare them to the other budget bundles around. The price tag of $650 might throw some people off at first as they try to compare it to bundles like from Fanatec, Moza, and even Camus. But these bundles aren't actually the direct comp to Turtle Beach because of the strength of the wheel and because of having load cell pedals. The closest comp I could find was the Fanatec Ready to Race McLaren or F1 bundle, around $750, but that's still not a perfect comparison, and I'll go over why in a little bit. But in terms of pure specs, the bundle is not a ripoff. In fact, it is a pretty good deal. I wouldn't call it a steal, but I'll call it a pretty good deal. To me, a set of pedals with a load cell brake pedal is probably a baseline worth about $150-ish, and then you have the button box, which I'll probably think is a $50-ish button box, and then if you put those together, the wheel itself is valued around $450. That's not the greatest deal in the world, but I don't think it's anything close to a ripoff. But that's just purely in terms of specs. Let's talk about the actual features and how the wheel and pedals feel. A lot of the early reviews had some complaints about the state of the software on launch and just having a lot of bugs, and thankfully I did not encounter very many bugs in setting it up. There was a very long update to get the firmware updated, but after that, the wheel was pretty much plug and play with very little effort to get it working. Though I did download the program, the virtual HUD was a great way to customize the wheel, and I did enjoy having that freedom of going around and switching things, though I don't think I would mess with it much moving forward because I'm more of a drive first type of person, so when I get my settings, I rarely switch off of them. There was one glitch that I ran into, and that the bottom left paddle was the exact same input recognition as the clutch pedal, so I couldn't get them any differentiated, which was unfortunate when I tried driving with only hand controls. We interrupt this review to show you, yes, you actually can do hand controls. If you look at this, there's two sets of paddles on them. The top ones are the magnetic shifters, which feel really good, by the way. I really enjoy them. But then you also have a second set of paddles with potentiometers on them, so you get a full range of motion. But yeah, now you can use hand controls with the potentiometers on these. So actually, I know I have a couple of friends in iRacing who are paralyzed and actually racing like these, so now there's an option that's like less customized, and you can actually just have not a cheap wheel, but a more readily available wheel that you can just use hand controls with direct drive. It's pretty cool. The button box was able to be plugged in and worked right off the bat with none of those glitches that other reviews have talked about, but I had a couple of the dials not being able to be recognized by iRacing, which was a little disappointing, as those dials were the ones that I would want to use for like my brake bias or something like that. But having the ignition switch and the cover is a perfect fidget device even when I'm just sitting around waiting for a race. I have no complaints about the feeling of the wheel at all. The quick release worked good, and also the force feedback was very precise. I was able to feel a lot of it in the corners to the point where I actually had to turn down my force feedback. I was trying it at the maximum for a while, but it was just a little bit too much for me. I was wrestling with the wheel too much, and so I had to lower it back down to my more normal amount towards the 4 to 5 Newton meters max. The force feedback was a little bit different than what I have felt in other wheels that I've tried before, where it never really had any jagged edges to the force feedback. Even when I was driving through a ton of bumps and it was bombarding me with force feedback, everything felt more of like a back and forth as opposed to a jagged hit on the force feedback. I've spent the week trying to figure out if I like that or not, or if I'm just not used to it. And I think I might prefer it in the sense that when I hit walls or other cars or make mistakes, it's less jarring on the hands. But I almost like those jagged all at once feeling of force feedbacks when I'm driving because it gets the information to my brain a little faster. And as some of you know, I like a really light wheel when I'm driving, so when there's no force feedback, I don't like a lot of dampening naturally from the wheel. And this Turtle Beach VelocityOne wheel had the best of that I've seen so far. But overall, the performance of the wheel, very satisfactory. I did not use the HUD as much as I thought I would. I think it's just because of how used I am to iRacing overlays, to where having telemetry and stuff on the HUD is a cool and novel concept, but at the end of the day, I'm getting everything I need from the screen in iRacing, so I don't really need it on the wheel. But I can see that being very useful for other games and other people. So for my last wheel review, I pretty much just glossed over the pedals that come in the bundle because I say, hey, you're gonna wanna upgrade those eventually. Well, this is a little bit different because this bundle comes with a load cell brake. So this is about the most cheaply constructed way that you can make load cell pedals, a lot of plastic, but that's not to say that they are not quality enough to use for racing. They are adjustable, you can move the brake around a little bit, and the feeling of the sensors are just about as precise as I would expect from my own Club Sport V3 pedals, and those are load cell as well too, but they have the vibration motor. And in my opinion, that is the most important part of those pedals, something that the Turtle Beach pedals don't have. So while these load cell pedals provide an advantage in precision over some of the more budget pedal setups that you would get in other bundles, the problem with it is that coupled with this force feedback that's a little less jagged, and what I found was sometimes in corners, I was unable to process whether I was kicking out loose quite as quickly as I would with my other pedals mixed with a more jagged force feedback wheel. And again, I'm not speaking on it in terms of realism. I don't really know what real is, which is kind of funny, but what I know is what makes me go faster. And what makes me go faster in racing is having all of the information that I can possibly have as quick as possible. That sets me up for success. So while I would vastly prefer the Turtle Beach pedals to any other bundle pedal that I have tried so far, I just think that you would still need to upgrade these over time if you were really getting into sim racing and wanted to maximize your performance. In terms of the button layout on the wheel and the button box, I actually really prefer this layout, even if it looks a little bit goofy in some pictures. I have had wheels with tons of buttons on them and I find myself getting lost on what I need to press, but with the Turtle Beach wheel, what it does a good job with is having button clusters and smaller and more spaced out and having different types of inputs that I can really differentiate what I need. And then the button box off to the side is very easy to access. So with taking all of that into consideration and the hours that I have put into driving this wheel in iRacing, I can confidently say that for a first product and really as an overall product, this Turtle Beach bundle is good. It's overhated. I have very few issues with it, and the issues that I have are incredibly minor. But with that being said, why am I having a hard time recommending this bundle to anyone? In my opinion, this product is having a bit of an identity crisis. Which sim racer or even video game racer is this product even for? In my opinion, there are three main types of sim racing buyers: those who consider budget the most, those who consider performance the most, and those who consider immersion the most. And the Turtle Beach bundle finds its way almost dead center in the middle of all of these, with no weaknesses, but also no strengths. In terms of budget and convenience, there really is no other bundle like it out there that provides everything that it has while also being able to be picked up at a store. But on the downside, there are direct drive bundles that are 50% cheaper than it. I can't recommend this bundle for a kid who's wanting to get into iRacing or sim racing for the first time, because even if I wanted to get them on direct drive for the first time, I would probably want them to just get their toes wet on one of the cheaper bundles, which they could upgrade over time, as opposed to the Turtle Beach bundle where you're kind of stuck in place with what you got, even if your starting point is of higher performance. The lack of a current upgrade ecosystem means that you would need somebody to be able to almost drop $700 on a sim racing bundle, but that's where they would want to end it. They would never want to put another $300 in for better pedals. They'd never want to get another $500 for a better wheelbase. They drop $700 and then just stop. And I don't think that's a very common type of person. In terms of a person who buys purely for performance, you can get away with buying this wheel, and I think that you could become one of the best in iRacing just with this wheel. I don't think you need much more than it. But the problem is, the pedals that it comes with will need an upgrade if you want to be at an advantage, or at least not at a disadvantage compared to your peers. And in terms of immersion, this is really the first time I've ever seen a readily available mass-produced button box come with a bundle, which is really cool. It helps with immersion in a way, except I feel like they didn't fully commit to the aesthetic enough for it to really convince me. Everything is there, the lights are a nice touch, and the RGB that you can do on it is cool too, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty cheap plastic button box, and when I'm driving, I'm not really looking at my button box, I'm looking at my screen and reaching out for my button box. So what matters most is about how the buttons feel, and the buttons are really cheap feeling plastic buttons. If they were the more hardcore professional style, you would see them in a real car type button, then I wouldn't care much about what it looked like, because when I'm racing, it would feel immersive and realistic. The fact that it exists at all is worth something, because it is now convenient for me to reach out and do something. But if they're gonna go all in for immersion and have the appeal of that button box and the aesthetic, they needed to go all in on it, even if it cost a little more. I would have a lot easier of a time recommending a hypothetical bundle with this wheel, this base, a button box that feels more realistic. I don't really care how it would look, to be quite honest with you, and then pedals with a load cell but also vibration motor. I would recommend that hypothetical bundle up to like $850 probably. But my main takeaway is that Turtle Beach is here in the sim racing space, and they're legit. I have not had a reason to think that they are not legit trying out this wheel, and my main issues with them just come with the ideas for the product itself and who it is for. I really look forward to see how Turtle Beach expand their ecosystem in the future, and maybe a lot of the complaints that I have will just go away and become outdated. But in terms of if this wheel will now become my personal daily driver wheel, that is TBD, because I have one more wheel to try out. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all on the track.